Ladies, fellas, gather round for a second, we gotta talk. See, some of you all out here thinking you're in love, but let me ask you something. Is it really love? Or are you just obsessed with somebody who's not even giving you half of what you deserve? Now don't get mad, I'm just here to tell the truth. The kind of truth your best friend's scared to say. Let's break this down because obsession is dressed up real nice these days. It puts on cologne, buys you dinner, and texts you. Good morning, beautiful. But it ain't love. Here's sign number one, you're always checking your phone. Every 5 minutes, you're refreshing Instagram, looking at their last scene, rereading old messages like they Shakespeare. Baby, if your peace depends on whether someone texted you back, that's not love, that's addiction. Love is calm, not frantic. Sign number two, you ignore the red flags like they don't exist. They show up late, cancel on you, treat you like an option. But you're still defending them like they paying your rent and doing your taxes. Love doesn't require you to lie to yourself every day. That's obsession convincing you that potential matters more than reality. Sign number three, you've lost yourself. You used to go out with your friends, hit the gym, chase your goals. Now, you're sitting at home wondering why they haven't called. If you're molding your whole identity around someone else, baby, that ain't love. That's you abandoning you. Sign number four, you're scared they'll leave, even when they ain't treating you right. Listen to me. If you're holding on to someone tighter the more they pull away, you're not in love. You're trying to win a game you were never supposed to play. Love don't come with begging and bargaining. If they want to be there, they'll stay. If they don't, let him go. And sign number five, you confuse intensity for intimacy. Just because it feels deep doesn't mean it's real. Just because the highs are high doesn't mean it's healthy. Love isn't always butterflies and costs. Real love feels like safety, like peace, like home. Let me tell you this, obsession will drain you. It'll have you up at 2 a.m. crying over someone who's fast asleep like nothing happened. That ain't the life you were built for. You're not supposed to be chasing someone to feel whole. You're supposed to walk whole and meet someone who walks beside you. So if it's feeling heavy, if it's feeling like you can't breathe without them, if you've stopped being you just to be theirs, step back. That's not love. That's obsession. And it won't last. It never does. But you will. Let it go, and love, the real kind, will find you when you're whole, when you're healed, when you remember who you were before you forgot. Because baby, the right love doesn't cost you your soul. Obsession makes you chase validation instead of peace, and it happens so quietly that you often don't even realize it. You start thinking it's love because it feels intense. It feels exciting, it feels like a rush, but deep down it's not calming your soul, it's stirring up anxiety. You find yourself constantly checking your phone, wondering if they texted, if they viewed your story, if they liked your photo, and if they didn't, suddenly your whole mood changes. Your emotions are no longer your own, they're attached to their actions. You start tying your worth to their attention, thinking that if they respond quickly, they must care. And if they don't, then maybe you're not enough. That's the dangerous thing about obsession. It tricks your mind into believing that someone else has the power to define your value. You begin to measure your happiness by how much they show interest, and when that interest drops, so does your self-esteem. The peace you once had in solitude disappears. The quiet moments that used to comfort you become heavy with doubt and overthinking. You try to justify their behavior, convincing yourself that maybe they're just busy or stressed, or not good with their phone, when really you're just looking for crumbs of reassurance to keep feeding your obsession. You can't focus like you used to. You can't enjoy the things that used to bring you joy because your mind is always on them, wondering what they're doing, who they're with, and why they're not reaching out. You start making excuses for them that you wouldn't make for anyone else. You lower your standards just to stay close to them. Even if it means sacrificing your own emotional balance, you forget how to feel full on your own because you've convinced yourself that they're the missing piece you need to feel complete. You start overanalyzing your every move, every word, every message you send, hoping you come across the right way so they won't lose interest. You become more concerned with being liked than being yourself. You stop being real. That's not love. That's fear wearing a mask of affection. Love doesn't make you question yourself this much. Obsession has you living in constant uncertainty, always waiting for them to validate your worth with a compliment, a reply, a post, a gesture, anything that tells you you're still wanted. You'll start competing with people you don't even know, comparing yourself to everyone who likes their photos or comments on their stories. You look for signs that you still matter, and the moment something feels off, your whole world shifts. You can't sleep properly, can't think straight, can't go a day without worrying about what they feel, where they are, or if they're slipping away. Your peace is gone, your power is gone, and all of it now rests in the hands of someone who probably doesn't even realize the grip they have on your mind. You call it love, but deep down, it's your need to feel seen, to feel chosen, to feel like you finally matter to someone. Red flags ignored early turn into heartbreak later, and it's not because you didn't notice them. It's because you chose to look the other way. You told yourself it was just a bad day, that they didn't mean it like that, that maybe you were being too sensitive, but deep down you knew something felt off. The way they spoke to you with just a little too much sharpness, the way they dismissed your feelings like they were inconveniences, the way they avoided giving you clear answers, the way they pulled back every time you got too close. Those weren't minor quirks or things that would just fix themselves over time. Those were signs, lower, flashing signs. But you wanted the fantasy more than the truth, so you held on and hoped they would change. You saw how they talked about their ex, full of bitterness, never taking accountability, always blaming the other person. You noticed how they never apologized properly, how they twisted arguments to make you feel like you were the one overreacting. You felt how often you had to explain basic respect, how often you were left wondering what you did wrong when you were only asking for the bare minimum, but you didn't walk away. You convinced yourself they just needed more time, more love, more patience. You made excuses because you didn't want to start over again, because you were scared of being alone again, because you thought maybe this time would be different. You wanted it to work so badly that you silenced your instincts. You tuned out your inner voice that was telling you this didn't feel right. You stopped listening to your friends when they gently tried to point out the same patterns they'd seen you fall for before. You brushed it off as them not understanding your connection, but deep down you were scared they were right. You didn't want to believe that you had fallen for someone who was only showing up halfway. You were tired of failed attempts, so you poured your energy into forcing this one to succeed, even if it meant betraying your own standards. The red flags weren't just moments, they were patterns. How they treated others, how they reacted under pressure, how they responded to your boundaries. And still, you kept rewriting the story in your head, focusing on the potential of who they could be rather than accepting they consistently were. You held on to the good days like lifelines and dismissed the bad ones like accidents. You didn't want to feel like you'd wasted time, so you kept investing more, hoping it would eventually pay off, even as your gut kept tugging at you. The truth is, every red flag you ignore turns into a lesson you'll have to learn the hard way. Not because you're naive, but because you loved with hope instead of clarity. But ignoring the problem never makes it go away. It only delays the hurt, deepens the wound, and leaves you asking yourself later why you didn't leave when you first saw the signs. Losing yourself for love is never real love, it's self-abandonment in disguise, and it starts quietly. In the beginning, you still feel like you, still hold on to your routines, your boundaries, your values, but slowly, piece by piece, you begin to shift. You cancel plans with friends just in case they call. You stop doing things you love because they don't seem interested in them. You adjust how you dress, how you speak, how you express yourself, not because you want to, but because you think it'll make them like you more. You start measuring your worth through their eyes, believing that if you just become what they want, they'll finally love you fully. That's not love, that's performing. And the longer you perform, the more your real self fades into the background. You start second-guessing your opinions, keeping quiet to avoid disagreements, smiling when something feels wrong, laughing when it doesn't feel funny. You convince yourself that compromise means completely giving in, that sacrifice means constantly putting yourself last. You don't speak up when something hurts because you don't want to seem dramatic or needy. You tell yourself it's just part of being in a relationship. That love requires patience and effort, but what you're really doing is silencing your own needs. You trade your voice for temporary peace, not realizing that the more you shrink, the more they expect you to stay small. You stop showing up for yourself so you can keep showing up for someone who wouldn't even notice if you disappeared a little more each day. The things that once made you happy become distant memories. You no longer chase your goals with the same fire. You no longer protect your time with the same conviction. You no longer prioritize your dreams because you've made them the center of your world. Your identity becomes wrapped up in how they treat you, how much attention they give you, how present they are in your life. You forget who you were before they came into the picture. You lose your glow, your energy, your sense of self, all in the name of keeping someone close who doesn't even require you to be whole. You call it love because you've convinced yourself that loving someone means doing anything to make them stay. But in truth, love never asks you to disappear. You start feeling empty even when they're around. You begin to resent the very changes you made to please them because deep down, you know you've betrayed yourself. You miss the old you, the version of you that had confidence, clarity, boundaries. But you keep pushing through, hoping they'll finally see how much you've given, hoping all your effort will eventually make them love you back the way you've loved them. You give and give and give until there's nothing left for you, and the person staring back in the mirror feels like a stranger. You wear a smile, but it doesn't reach your eyes. You stay, but you don't feel safe. You try to make it work, but you've lost the most important thing of all. Yourself. A fear of losing them keeps you trapped in toxic cycles, and it doesn't start with the fear itself. It starts with the little compromises you make just to keep them close. You tell yourself it's normal to feel a little anxious when they don't respond, that everyone gets insecure sometimes, but soon that anxiety becomes your normal. You begin to anticipate their reactions before you speak, carefully choosing your words so you don't upset them, walking on eggshells, holding your breath around simple conversations. You're not in a relationship anymore. You're in a performance, playing the role of whatever version of you they'll tolerate. Not because they asked you to, but because you're terrified that if you show them your real self, they'll leave you. Don't set boundaries because you don't want to push them away. You accept half-hearted effort, broken promises, cold silences, because deep down you believe that having part of them is better than having none of them. You start settling, making room for their inconsistencies, telling yourself no one is perfect, that every relationship has issues, but what you're really doing is justifying behavior that's draining you. You forgive things that made you cry all night. You explain away behavior that made you feel worthless, and you call it love when it's really just fear wearing a different name. You're scared of starting over, scared of being alone, scared of confirming the belief that maybe you weren't enough. You cling to moments of affection like they're proof that things will get better, that if you just hold on a little longer, they'll see how much you care and finally change. You see the pattern, but you stay anyway, hoping that this time will be different, that this time they'll stay, that this time you won't have to beg for the bare minimum. You keep pouring more into someone who gives you just enough to keep you hoping. It becomes a cycle. Good days that pull you back in, bad days that break you, and the constant waiting for the next high. Your life becomes a loop of emotional survival, constantly trying to maintain peace, prevent fights, avoid abandonment. You find yourself changing your personality to be more appealing, more agreeable, more whatever you think they need. You lose your voice, your power, your ability to say no. You stay up late thinking about what you could have done differently, what you should have said, how you could have fixed it. You carry guilt that doesn't belong to you and responsibility for their actions, like it's your job to save the relationship all by yourself. You've tied your identity to their presence so tightly that the idea of them leaving feels like losing a piece of your soul. You forget that you existed before them. You forget that you had peace before chaos became your normal. You forget that walking away isn't weakness, it's survival. But fear clouds all of that. Fear convinces you that pain is better than loneliness. Fear whispers that staying broken is safer than risking the unknown. Fear makes you believe that if you leave, you'll never find something better. In intensity without stability is not intimacy, and a lot of people confuse passion for connection. You meet someone, the chemistry is electric, the conversations are deep, the nights are long, and everything feels so alive that you swear this has to be it. You start telling yourself that no one's ever made you feel like this before, that the bond is special, undeniable, maybe even fate. But what you don't realize is that intensity doesn't mean something is real. It just means it's intense. It's loud, it's fast, it's consuming, but that doesn't make it love. Real intimacy builds with time, not with codes. It grows with trust, not drama. It deepens through consistency, not constant emotional highs and lows. When something is intense, it grabs your attention quickly. It floods your brain with dopamine. It gives you those addictive highs, and you start craving the rush more than the person. You wait for that next text, that next compliment, that next moment that makes your heart race, but in between, there's silence, confusion, mixed signals. You start asking your questions you wouldn't be asking if things were truly secure. You start feeling uncertain, doubting their intentions, wondering if you imagine the whole connection. But you stay, because when it's good, it's so good, and those highs are powerful enough to make you ignore all the red flags in between. You begin romanticizing the chaos, calling it passion. You start thinking that the emotional roller coaster is proof of a deep bond. You mistake the butterflies in your stomach for love when they're really anxiety in disguise. You tell yourself that real love is supposed to be fiery, wild, uncontrollable, but you forget that real love is also supposed to feel safe. When someone truly loves you, it's not just about the moments that take your breath away. It's about how they treat you when things are quiet. Do they show up when there's no thrill? Do they care for you when there's no performance? Do they stay when things get real, or do they disappear until the next high? Without stability, intensity becomes unpredictable. It creates a push and pull dynamic where you're constantly chasing emotional security that never comes. One day they're all in, the next they're distant, and you spend more time trying to figure them out than being present in the connection. You confuse mystery with depth, inconsistency with excitement, emotional unavailability with strength. But real intimacy is built on emotional presence, on being seen and known fully. It's not about the rush, it's about the reliability. It's not about proving your worth, it's about being accepted without conditions. When you confuse intensity for intimacy, you end up in relationships where your nervous system is always activated, where you're constantly in fight or flight mode, where you feel addicted to the highs and crushed by the lows. You start settling for moments instead of consistency, for chemistry instead of commitment, for sparks instead of security. And in the end, no matter how strong the pull feels, without stability, the fire always burns out. Real love feels like freedom, not fixation. And when you finally experience it, you'll understand the difference instantly. It won't make you anxious about your worth, it won't leave you questioning your value, and it definitely won't require you to become someone you're not. Real love gives you room to breathe. It doesn't demand your constant attention or emotional labor just to stay alive. It flows naturally, without fear, without games, without pressure to always perform or prove yourself. You won't feel like you're walking on eggshells or competing for affection. You won't have to fight to be heard or beg to be understood. You'll just be able to exist freely, fully, and honestly. When love is real, it gives you back to yourself. You won't feel smaller or dimmed down. In fact, you'll shine brighter because real love nurtures your growth instead of stifling it. It encourages your independence. It celebrates your individuality. It doesn't see your strength as a threat. It sees it as beautiful. You won't feel like you're being watched or evaluated all the time. You'll feel safe, even in your messiest moments. You'll be able to speak your truth without fearing they'll leave. You'll be able to take space when you need it without fearing it means the end of the relationship. Love that's real allows space for both people to thrive, not just one fixation. On the other hand, is fueled by fear. It wants control, not connection. It disguises itself as passion, but it's really possession. It doesn't care about who you are. It only cares about keeping you close, no matter the cost. When you're fixated on someone, you start building your identity around them. Your happiness becomes dependent on their mood. Your peace becomes dependent on their presence. You can't enjoy your life unless they're in it, and that's not love. That's emotional captivity. Similar values. You begin living in a state of constant anxiety, always worried about what they're thinking, what they're doing, how they're feeling. You lose touch with your own needs because you're too busy trying to meet theirs. Real love doesn't trap you in that cycle. It won't make you feel like you have to chase or constantly prove your worth. It won't have you scrolling through their social media, reading between the lines, or wondering where you stand. Instead, it gives you clarity. It gives you assurance. It gives you the peace of knowing that you are chosen, not because you begged for it, but because they see your value and honor it. You won't be afraid to take up space. You won't feel guilty for having boundaries. You'll be able to dream, to grow, to change, and the love will evolve with you. That's the kind of love that doesn't feel heavy. That's the kind of love that makes you feel free. Free to be soft. Free to be strong, free to walk away if something no longer aligns with your soul, free to be loved for exactly who you are, not for who you become to please someone else.